The late afternoon sun painted the streets in gold, but for Marcus Green, it was just another workday. Dressed in worn jeans, a plain hoodie, and a baseball cap pulled low, he looked like any other man grabbing a coffee on the corner of 8th and Jefferson. What no one could see, what he was paid to make invisible, was the small badge tucked deep inside his pocket, the one that read Special Agent, Federal Bureau of Investigation. For months, Marcus had been working deep undercover on a case that twisted through drug corridors, gun running, and corrupt business deals that strangled communities like the one he grew up in. His cover required him to blend in, not as an agent, but as a man you wouldn't look at twice. That day, he was on his way to meet an informant. Just another step in a mission where patience was currency and silence was survival. But patience can be tested in ways you don't expect. As Marcus approached his car, parked in front of a small grocery store, he heard the sharp blast of a police siren behind him. At first, he thought it was aimed at someone else. The street was busy. Kids were riding bikes. A food cart was doing steady business at the corner. But the siren cut again, shorter, more deliberate. "Hey, you! Stop right there." Marcus turned. A uniformed police officer, white, mid-30s, stocky build, was striding toward him, one hand resting conspicuously on his holster. His voice carried the tone Marcus knew too well, the kind that wasn't just about law enforcement but about dominance. Marcus had been stopped before. As a black man in America, the badge in his pocket hadn't made him immune to that. But every time it happened, a part of him still felt the heat rise in his chest. Still felt the centuries of weight pressing down. Still had to calculate, in a split second, how much of himself he could show without escalating the situation. "What seems to be the problem, officer?" Marcus kept his voice even. Calm wasn't weakness, it was control. "Don't move," the officer barked. "Hands where I can see them." Around them, people slowed their steps. Some stopped entirely. Marcus could feel the eyes on him. He knew how fast a simple interaction could spiral, how quickly a narrative could be written before the truth even had a chance to breathe. "Sir, I haven't done anything," Marcus said, hands visible. The officer smirked, as if he'd heard those words 100 times and dismissed them, every one of them. "We got a call about a suspicious individual hanging around here. You match the description." Marcus blinked slowly. "And what description is that?" The officer didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, scanning Marcus up and down like a predator sizing up prey. "ID. Now." Marcus's mind worked quickly. His undercover ID was in his wallet, fake name, fake address, all part of his assignment. His real badge and credentials were tucked in the lining of his jacket. But flashing that badge now would blow months of work. The tension was no longer just about him, it was about the mission, the people depending on him, the case that could bring down a network poisoning the streets. "I'm just here to shop," Marcus said evenly. "Is it a crime to stand outside a store now?" The officer stepped even closer, violating the invisible line of personal space. "Don't get smart with me. Empty your pockets." Marcus didn't move. The air around them felt heavier now. A woman nearby had pulled out her phone, quietly recording. A young boy clutched his mother's hand, his white eyes darting between Marcus and the officer. Marcus thought of his own son, 8 years old, learning about the world through moments like this. What lesson would this one teach? "Officer," Marcus said, his voice firm now, "I will cooperate. But you have no probable cause to search me." The officer's eyes narrowed. "I'll decide what cause I have." His hand twitched near his cuffs. "Turn around and put your hands on the car." A slow burn of anger coiled in Marcus's gut. He had been trained for dangerous encounters, drug busts gone bad, armed suspects, high-speed chases. But there was something uniquely infuriating about being treated like a criminal by someone sworn to the same oath he had taken, someone who didn't even think he could wear the same badge. Still, training overruled pride. Marcus turned, placing his palms on the cool metal of his car. He could feel every set of eyes on him. The humiliation wasn't in the position, it was in the assumption. As the officer began patting him down, Marcus kept his breathing steady. He couldn't let his cover break. Couldn't reveal who he was. Not yet. The officer's hand stopped at the inner pocket of Marcus's jacket. "What's this?" Marcus's heart thudded. "Just a wallet," he said carefully. The officer pulled it out, flipping it open. His face changed instantly, not to recognition, but to suspicion. "This doesn't look right." Who are you really? Marcus met his gaze. I told you, I'm just a man shopping for groceries. Don't lie to me, the officer snapped, but there was a flicker now, doubt, maybe, or unease. He was starting to realize that this wasn't going to play out the way he'd imagined. Before the officer could speak again, a black SUV turned the corner sharply and pulled to a stop. Two men in suits stepped out, moving with the kind of purpose that made bystanders instinctively step back. The lead man's voice was clear, commanding. Agent Green, are you all right? The street seemed to hold its breath. The officer froze. Marcus didn't move. The woman recording gasped softly. In that single moment, the balance shifted entirely. The officer's posture stiffened as the two suited men closed in. One of them flashed a badge so quickly that even those watching from across the street could see the golden letters, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The air shifted. The authority in those 3 words was undeniable. The bystanders knew it, the woman filming knew it, and judging by the sudden flush in the officer's face, he knew it too. Step away from him, the lead agent said sharply. Now. The officer hesitated, his hand still hovering over Marcus as though reluctant to lose the upper hand. But the stare from the federal agent was the kind that left no room for negotiation. Slowly, he stepped back, his voice fumbling for composure. What's going on here? What's going on? The lead agent replied, his tone measured but ice cold, is that you just detained one of our own. Special Agent Marcus Green. He's been working an undercover case for months, and you've just jeopardized it. Marcus straightened, turning to face the officer fully now. There was no hoodie-shielded humility in his stance anymore, only the unflinching presence of a man who had earned his authority through years of discipline, danger, and sacrifice. I told you, Marcus said quietly, but his voice carried across the street, I hadn't done anything wrong. The officer's eyes darted between Marcus and the other agents. I didn't know. I was just following a report. Were you? Marcus asked, his gaze steady. Or were you acting on your own assumptions? Let's be honest, officer, if I looked different, dressed different, would we even be having this conversation right now? The question hung in the air like a weight. The bystanders felt it, the recording phone caught it. And the officer, shifting uncomfortably, had no answer. The second agent, a tall black man with a deep, resonant voice, stepped forward. We know what a real investigation looks like, he said. It starts with observation, verification, facts. Not intimidation. Not humiliation. His eyes locked on the officer. And certainly not treating a law-abiding citizen, much less a fellow law enforcement officer, like a suspect because of the color of his skin. Marcus watched the officer's jaw tighten, pride wrestling with the creeping realization that he'd just made a career-defining mistake. He wasn't about to gloat, because this moment wasn't just about him. It was about every man who'd been stopped for no reason, every boy taught to keep his hands visible and his tone polite even when his dignity was under assault. You want to know the difference between us? Marcus said, his voice even. We wear the same uniform in theory, but I don't treat people like criminals just because I can. Power isn't a weapon, it's a responsibility. And if you can't tell the difference, you shouldn't be carrying it. The officer's lips parted, but the words never came. He looked smaller now, as though the crowd's silent judgment was pressing him down. The lead agent broke the tension. We'll be filing an official report about this incident. I suggest you think carefully about the choices you make from here on. He turned to Marcus. You good to proceed with your assignment? Marcus nodded. The mission came first, but as he opened the door to his car, he glanced once more at the officer. One day, he said quietly enough for only the officer to hear, you'll realize this job isn't about you. It's about the people you're supposed to serve. The SUV pulled away first, the two agents inside. Marcus followed, his undercover role once again his shield and his sword. But the street behind him still hummed with what had just happened. The woman lowered her phone, her eyes meeting the young boy's. Remember what you saw today, she murmured to him. Remember how truth stood its ground. Later that night, Marcus sat alone in his apartment, the case files spread out on his table. The city outside was a restless blur of sirens, headlights, and shadows. But his mind kept circling back to the officer's face, the flicker of defiance, the flash of embarrassment, the weight of being caught in the wrong. He thought about his father, a man who'd driven a bus for 30 years and taught Marcus that respect was something you gave freely until someone proved they didn't deserve it. He thought about his son, who still believed that good always wins if you stand firm. And he thought about the thousands of others who didn't have an FBI badge in their pocket when the sirens wailed for them. Marcus knew he wouldn't be able to erase moments like today from the world. But he could carry himself in a way that proved something better was possible. He could be the example, not the exception. The next morning, the video was already circulating online. The headline was blunt: "Cop harasses Black Man, learns he's an FBI agent." The comments were a mix of outrage and vindication. Some applauded Marcus for keeping his composure. Others called for the officer's suspension. A few insisted the cop had just been doing his job. But anyone who'd watched the clip knew the truth: it hadn't been about the job. It had been about power, and who was assumed to deserve it. By afternoon, Marcus's phone rang. It was the bureau's director. "Green," he said, "the department's been in touch. The officer has been placed on leave pending investigation." Marcus didn't celebrate. This wasn't a game, and the consequences weren't points on a scoreboard. Still, there was a certain justice in knowing that accountability had been set in motion. A week later, Marcus was back on the same street. This time, his cover was a little different: blue work shirt, tool belt, steel-toed boots. As he walked past the grocery store, he noticed the same young boy from that day, standing with his mother. The boy's eyes lit up. "Hey," the boy said softly, "my mom showed me the video. You didn't yell. You didn't get scared. You just told the truth." Marcus smiled, crouching down so they were eye level. "Sometimes," he said, "telling the truth is the most powerful thing you can do. But you have to be ready for people not to want to hear it." The boy nodded, serious beyond his years. As Marcus walked away, he felt the weight of the badge in his pocket, not as a shield against what the world could throw at him, but as a reminder of the oath he'd taken. To protect, to serve, to stand for something bigger than himself. In a city where stories like his too often ended in tragedy, this one had ended in exposure, and maybe, just maybe, in change. Marcus knew it wouldn't fix everything. The roots were deep. The history was long. But each time the truth broke through the cracks, it gave the next person a little more light to see by. And that was worth every moment of restraint, every quiet assertion of dignity, every time he chose composure over rage. Because the real schooling wasn't in embarrassing a man who'd misused his power, it was in showing everyone watching what real power looked like.